Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and this is the second video in a two-part series where we are stretching our supplies. In video 1, we used the Kat Scrappiness Witch's Brew dies to make that spooky scene, but in this video we are going to stretch it to make a Christmas card. So here are the Witch's Brew dies, and it has a bunch of different stockings, leggings for a witch, but I'm going to use them to make some elf tights. So the die that has the stripes doesn't actually cut all of the stripes separately, which is great because it would have been a lot of work to put those together, but it does deboss them into the die. And so I am using a little bit of Post-it tape, masking tape, to section off the different pieces of the tights, and I'm going over them with some watermelon ink, and then I'm using a red glitter pen on top of that. This is one of the new Kat Scrappiness blending tools, and it's great because I didn't end up with ink everywhere or oversaturating my Post-it tape, so I was able to use that over and over again. So here are my witch's shoes, and I'm going to add one onto my tights, and I was kind of pointing with my pokey tool. On one of them, I have already trimmed off along the bottom. There's a part of the foot that looks flat, like it's flat on the ground. And to me, they looked elfier, rounding that out. So I am stacking up 2 deep of the leggings, and then when I go to add the second shoe on the back, I will just curve all of those as well. I'm going to make these legs so that they swing from an ornament, right? It's an interactive card, and so I want these to be extra sturdy, partly so that they don't get damaged when they're swinging, but perhaps more importantly, because the heavier they are, the better they'll swing. So if you're ever putting together a swinging something like this, right? Don't be afraid to stack up your cardstock a little bit. I promise it will make things easier. Okay, so here again, I am not trimming off very much, right? Those are the sort of the little pieces that came off of that shoe boot. And I should have done these together. I don't know why I didn't. I thought it would be easier to go through one layer of cardstock at a time, but because of the way that I did this, it's hard to get my scissors in there while also looking at it from the front. Anyway, maybe just do them at the same time. That would simplify everything. Then I'm going to bring in the Christmas Shaker Ornament tags. I love this set. I originally thought I was going to have them hanging from one of those ornaments, but they were too small. But we're going to work around that. Anyway, we are using part of that set for something else. So I went ahead and used one of the little dots that it cuts out from the ornament, like the tag part of it. And I'm going to add them right onto the end of the twirly part of my shoes, again, to help them look a little bit more like elf shoes. Okay, so here's the ornament, right? In my head, it was going to work great. But in practice, that didn't really happen. So instead, I'm going to use 2 of our double stitched circles, and I am just going to cut out a circle frame. I am cutting it right out of the middle of this A2 piece of cardstock because I thought I was going to use that for my card base, but I would call this the card that goes wrong, except I like how it turns out in the end. So this is the Stitched Winter Swirl plate, and it just stitches or pierces this pattern of winter swirly business into my cardstock, and I love that. But I wanted more of a border showing on my card base, so that I'm also going to grab the double stitched rectangle, the largest one from that set, and I'm going to cut that out one more time. The stitching will match kind of what's already on there, but then it gives me a full 1/8 inch border all the way around instead of a 1/16 of an inch border. Of course, now I go to put my new ornament, my homemade ornament, and the legs on there, and like, it is tight. If I was going to glue everything flat, I think it would be fine, but I want them to swing. So we're going to have to do this differently. I am pulling the legs out. I'm figuring out how far down do I want them to go. and then I cut a new card base. So it's not a 5x7 card. It's a 4 1/4 by 7-inch card because I still wanted to be able to use this stitched winter swirl piece. So I just cut it. You guys, I didn't measure. That's so unlike me. I just cut it, you know, kind of where it looked good. And then I'm going to use my double stitched rectangle and I'm going to cut a piece of red and a piece of white glitter cardstock and kind of see what I like better, filling in that stripe in the middle. That way I'm not really starting over with anything. It's just the card base that I'm having to reimagine. But I love that we're stretching more dies than just the original when we do this, right? We're taking an A2 pierce plate and we're moving it to a much larger card. I'll just stick this in a 5x7 envelope when I'm done. You'll have to let me know if you like the white stripe or the red stripe better. In the end, I'm gonna go with the red stripe. But I don't know, looking at it in editing, it's hard to say. So these are pearl powders. These are fairly new from Kat Scrappiness, and I'm bringing in 3 of them. They're a lot like Perfect Pearls, only the jars are bigger, and they are water activated. And so I have just mixed a little bit of water and I'm going to splatter it, but you can use these in all the same ways you might use Perfect Pearls. If you use it with like a Versamark ink or something like that, it's not going anywhere, right? You can mist it with water and it will stay. So I'm adding a little bit of the mint and then the gold and the white pearl powders just for a little bit of extra interest, a little bit of snow. And then I will start adding this onto my card base. I'm trying to maintain, again, that 1/8 inch border all the way around. I just trimmed down the red piece to fit and the opening that I had. But really, however you cut it, like it'll be great. I could have just overlapped the gray pieces on top of the red piece, but I didn't want the extra bulk with the swinging mechanism on it. Okay, so there's my card base. Now I'm going to work on my shaker. So I have the little piece that I cut out, my frame, using my 2 dies, my 2 stitched circle dies. And then I use the larger circle die to cut out that acetate. Then I use that same die to cut out this light blue piece of cardstock. Then I went around it with some metallic silver ink that probably didn't need to happen. By the time I put the frame on there, you can't really see the metallic ink, but I can tell that it's there. And then I splattered that with a little bit more of that white pearl powder. I'm going to come all the way around the edge of that shaker with some 1/8 inch foam tape. And I'm going to add some sprinkles. I love, again, tons and tons of new sprinkle mixes out from Kat Scrappiness. I will link what I can. This is the Frosty sprinkle mix. And so that piece is a little warped. I had to heat set the ink and there's little balls in it and the balls went everywhere. Do it flat. And then I wanted to add, in addition to the Frosty sprinkle mix, a little bit of something shiny, right? Everybody needs a little something shiny. So I added just a couple pinches of the white diamond sequin mix. Off camera, I moved all of that onto the other side of the shaker so it was a little bit more contained, and I pulled out some of the largest ball pieces from the Frosty mix because I was afraid, I don't double up my foam tape, I was afraid they were going to be too tall. Then I added a little bit of wet glue on top of my foam tape for the wiggle room, and I layered those together, and I love this shaker. I love it. It sparkles, it shines. It's got a little bit of snow in there, some pops of red. It's great. Okay, so this circle is from the inside of that small ornament that was too small, but we're going to use this to make our swinging element for our legs. I am a little premature here. I'm gluing the legs onto the bottom of that circle, but I need to cut a hole in the circle. I could run the whole thing through my die cut machine, but I didn't want to flatten the texture of things. So I'm bringing in a very old 1/2 inch circle punch, and I'll add a hole that way. My card base is going to be 7 by 8.5, and then I am scoring at 4 1/4. Okay, so it's not quite a 5 by 7. I don't care. I'm here for a custom card size. I think this works out just fine. Actually, It's almost like a slimline, but a little shorter and a little wider. It's a pure accident that we ended up here, but I like this size. I think I will try this more often because I have a lot of A2 cover plates that I don't use as often as I would like. And I think this is a great way to stretch them. So here is my shaker, and then there are my legs, and I've got to kind of figure out all my pieces. The ornament top is from the original ornament, the one that was too small. Because when you think about it, for ornaments on your tree, they all kind of have the same size topper, no matter how big or small the ornament is. Once I get everything lined up on the card where I think it's ultimately going to go, I'm going to draw with a pencil inside that circle I punched out. And then I am just going to use my scissors to cut a foam square into something that's sort of round. Would this square work? Maybe, but it was also too big. So I'm just going to trim it, and I'll put the roundest part of that up at the top. Having drawn the circle really helps me here, so I'm not trying to like hold things in weird way. I don't know. It worked well. So I can see that they're swinging, they're doing what I want, and now I'm trying to figure out, how do I know where to put foam on the back of the shaker? So I kind of drew on the background, and now I'm using some tape just to figure out like, how high up are the legs swinging? I don't want any foam that's going to get in the way of the legs. Once I have an idea of where they're going to go, I added an extra circle of heavyweight white cardstock in the back, just because things got a little wonky when I went to glue the shaker together. This happens to me sometimes. I just add an extra layer on the back, and it usually smooths it out. Then I have some foam just on the top curve, and I've put wet glue behind the foam as well, so I can double check the legs and make sure that they're swinging before I press it down really securely. Here I am grabbing an emergency sentiment from my emergency card kits. I have a whole bunch that came out in early August. They're Christmas sentiments, and I am just going to trim out one of my strip sentiments, and I'm going to stretch that right across my ornament. I felt like I was kind of running out of space. I didn't know where else to put something. So I'm choosing Joy and Magic this season. It's one of my very favorite sentiments, and it makes me really happy. So that's about 1/4 inch wide, and then this one I'm going to trim to about 3/4 of an inch. So it's just a little bit wider than the sentiment strip, and that way I can give it a little matting layer that matches the frame on our shaker. I will add glue to the back of my sentiment, and then I just line it up so I have an equal margin on the top, left, and bottom. And I will very carefully trim off slivers from the right until it looks about even. I'll use my wet glue to add my sentiment right to the center. And I love that I can still see so much of that shaker. And that is going to finish up our card. So I'm going to try to, as best I can, hold this up for you and show you that swing. They swing so well. I was really, really pleased with how this turned out. So here it is. It fits in a 5x7 envelope. The legs shake super well. And remember where we started. I used that set to create this awesome Halloween card, a spooky scene. And then we end up in like happy holidays and Merry Christmas seasons. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.